Welcome to a special edition of the Voice of San Diego podcast. I'm Scott Lewis. And this week we have a special interview with Kevin Faulconer, the mayor of San Diego, about all sorts of things. We talked about short-term vacation rentals, homelessness, the future of the Republican Party, of which he is still a part, and many other topics. I packed it all in about half hour, so listen and give me your feedback. Go to our Facebook page, Voice of San Diego Podcast, and let me know what you thought and anybody else we should bring in for a longer interview. Well, I have the pleasure of being joined in the great Voice of San Diego Podcast studio by the Honorable Mayor, Kevin Faulconer. Welcome, Kevin.
Scott, it is great to be back. Thank you.
Yeah, this is kind of a very comfortable place for you, right? This is, you kind of own the city these days.
We should make it weekly.
Yes, of course.
A chance I get to come to the podcast.
Well, good.
This is where it happens.
You'll probably see a bump in your popularity. I don't know if you have a constant sort of read on your favorability rating, but after you come in here, there's a lot of people listen to this. Most popular political podcast recorded in downtown San Diego.
I went up 4.5 points last time,
yeah,
so that's why I'm back.
That's why he's back. I have a limited time with you, so I'm going to dive in.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming. You back from vacation? Me too. We got all that out of our system. Are you going on another one? Or?
No, but it was great to get away with the kids, and that was a lot of fun.
So you're here grinding in August?
Yeah, I'm going to be here.
Wow.
There's a few things going on,
Yeah,
as you might have known.
All right, let's talk about a couple of them. So
Yeah,
a couple of weeks ago, the City Council, San Diego City Council, you're aware of it, it finally made a decision about vacation rentals, and it decided that basically there should be no vacation rentals except for when a resident of a house decides to go to Europe or something for the summer. That person can rent out their own place, the one they live in, for up to 6 months. Now, you had proposed that residents should be able to do that plus manage one other vacation rental, and that would have also allowed people with, say, second homes in San Diego to rent those out.
Right.
Those are all, that's all done. Those are gone, or supposed to be gone. Your team, though, made a big point that day that said you were happy with how things turned out. Was that true?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. This had been going on for years. One of the focuses always had been, was it going to be 1 + 3? Was it going to be what I put forward of the 1 + 1? You had council members, it had been deadlocked for years. And so what was important to me was to ensure that we actually got regulations approved so we would have some clear rules of the road, not only from a registration standpoint, but also an enforcement mechanism. We have that now. And that to me was one of the most important things that we needed to do.
Now, you live in the Point Loma area. Your neighbors have some pretty passionate views about this. What were your personal views? Do you think San Diego should have vacation rentals in neighborhoods like that?
Yeah, I thought it was always, how do we strike the right balance? That's why I put the proposal forward that I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most importantly, and my team spent a lot of time on this, on crafting regulations and an enforcement mechanism, so you could actually ensure when it came to a quality of life in the neighborhoods, whether it's Point Loma or any neighborhood, that you've had folks that could respond and make sure that you enforce that. If you had the regulations without the enforcement, it's not going to work.
So a lot of the platforms were happy with your proposal. HomeAway, Airbnb, Share San Diego groups. They were okay with it. And the thing that came out was far different as far as the landscape of the city. I don't understand how you can be happy with both.
Well, look, I mean, it was as I said, you saw the council started from whether it was +3, +2. You had council members voting against their own proposal a year ago. It was kind of all over the map. Again, a whole other side that wasn't part of this discussion, which was, what is the registration? How do you get the platforms to agree to that? How do you make sure that we have consistency in the regulations? How do you make sure that we have that enforcement mechanism? And so to me, that was equally, if not more important, as to some of the discussions in terms of, is it going to be 1 + 1? Is it primary residence now +1 on the same lot, which it ended up being? But to have that clear rules of the road, which we did not have for years, and now we do.
Is the city really going to clear out and crack down on literally thousands of vacation rentals, like in Mission Beach, where they've been there for decades? Is the city really going to go clear those out?
Look, we're going to have the regulations; they're going to be enforced, and that's why this has been such a contentious issue for a long time. We're giving people a grace period. Obviously, a lot of it will be complaint driven. But look, it's important that we had these regulations and we have the enforcement mechanism. And I'm looking forward to putting those in place.
Do you think Mission Beach will be better without all of those vacation rentals? You represented that area for a long time.
I think you're still going to have vacation rentals, obviously.
You do? How?
Well, sure. You'll have folks in primary residence in Mission Beach. Look, it's Mission Beach has always been a great beach welcoming community. Yeah. And again, it all comes back to, and you heard this very clearly, not only in the council hearing, but for many hearings and a lot of discussions. Look, what is that balance? What is that? You have to be able to protect your quality of life. Right. And whether you're in Mission Beach, whether you're in anywhere in part of the city, neighbors deserve that. They expect that, and that's what they're going to get.
So, okay, well, it's not since the legalization of marijuana have I pictured the city changing in a way that we can feel and see so much. As with the idea that there's no like vacation rentals beyond what people do themselves.
I will agree with what you just said.
Okay.
We've seen that needle move. I think that's probably one of the reasons why you did not see that consensus right over the last several years. And this was a real issue that affected and does affect a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to watch. But you guys, you're saying you're all on board. And when you said it was complaint based, perhaps does that mean something can remain as long as nobody complains about it?
No. You got to follow the rules. You got to be registered, obviously. We'll be making sure that enforces that. But you also, part of the reason why you have the fee that will allow folks not just during the day but the evening to go out there. If folks are not doing the right thing, there's a mechanism to ensure that they are, and we will ensure that happens.
Right. Okay. All right. Similar topic: housing, homelessness. In your most recent State of the City speech, you said everybody wants more homeless services, but nobody wants homeless services in their neighborhood. We're doing some reporting right now about this project in Claremont, senior housing.
Yeah.
It would be housing for people who are homeless, which means they wouldn't be homeless anymore. So it's not necessarily homeless services. This is the kind of permanent housing everybody talks about, wanting to get people into. It's turned into an avalanche of criticism against the proposal there. Is this at what point do you need to just say you have to accept it? That's something you came in here a few months ago and said, like, I'm done sort of trying to please everybody on that.
Look, I feel strongly about that, and I stand by that statement. I also said that the elected officials, including myself, had searched too long for universal consensus, which does not exist. It is time for action and results. And so we're continuing that path, whether it was the temporary camp zone that we established, the bridge shelters. I will tell you the new storage center is being very well received by a lot of folks that were against it to begin with. Look, fear is a powerful human emotion. But at the same time, we absolutely need to get people off the street and into housing. Look, it's part of our job as the city and working with all of our partners and our police department and others to ensure that we are enforcing quality of life. You're seeing that. But doing nothing is not an option, Scott, and I know you feel strongly about that as well. And so when it comes to making the siting determinations and others, which I've done, sure, I'm going to get criticized by some folks. But at the same time, as you're seeing a difference, as you're seeing us move the needle in a positive direction, we have to continue that. You're always going to have some neighborhood folks that will not like whether it's X, Y, or Z. But what's the flip side of that if you don't do anything? And so it's never going to be easy. But my resolve on this continues to be extremely strong because we're seeing some of the positive results. And when you see, and this is all about partnerships, from folks from Alpha Project, from Veterans Village, VVSD, St. Vincent de Paul, they're helping people. They're getting them off. They're big focus on permanent supportive housing and more housing in general, which is what I'm spending most of my time on, because we need to. It's not going to be easy, but at the same time, you have to stand up and say we need action and not just endless discussion. Yeah.
So we have this. We have as sympathetic of a group of people as possible, seniors, homeless seniors, and yet this is still causing such a problem in Claremont. Is that something that you will continue to support, that specific project? But also, like, what can we do to sort of, I mean, you say we need to have resolve, but what can you do to make sure this stuff just gets done.
You're right. It takes political will on everybody's part, and you have to communicate, right, what's going to happen, and most importantly, what's not going to happen. Right. And again, as we're spending so much time on making some of the changes to make it easier to build housing and to build housing that San Diegans can actually afford. Right. And we just had some of our live work that passed the council yesterday, the work we've been doing on affordable housing density and others. We need more housing. Look, past mayors have been reluctant to say that. Why, Scott? Because of the fear of NIMBYism. Right. But I would, I also think we're at this unique point in time that people understand how critically important it is and how big the crisis is. This is not a Republican or Democratic issue. This is San Diegans that know the old way of doing business isn't working for us. And so when you see groups, progressive groups, when you see the BIA together, the Housing You Matters Coalition is just one example, saying we need to have this housing, that's what it's going to take to battle some of the folks that never want any change.
Right. So you had these tents, the bridge shelters you talked about, you put up. There was a dramatic change in the streets, but there's still a lot of people on the streets, different parts of the city. There was some concern that there wasn't enough people sort of graduating from these tents into more permanent housing or more stable situations. What do you think about that?
Well, it's the goal is not how many people go into the bridge shelters. It's how many people go out, to your point, that get permanent housing. Part of what you've seen with the bridge shelters being up is it's now a great example of the bottlenecks in the system. And so what is it keeping from somebody to get that throughput? Because each individual has a different story and each has different needs. One of the things that it showed was that the data in terms of folks that were priority one was completely off. And so that has forced now this reexamination of how we can actually get people in the coordinated entry system, get them the support, and match individuals with housing. And so that's a change that is happening. Because that is the ultimate goal. It's incredibly important to get people off the street, out of unsafe, unsanitary conditions. But it's most important to get them a place of their own, whether that be existing stock and all the programs we're doing with our landlords, Housing Our Heroes, but also new construction. They go hand in hand. You have to have both. And you have to have everybody working together on the same page to get those types of exits and the number of exits that we need to have.
What do you mean the data was off?
In terms of the folks that were assessed as priority one, they said there was this many people. There weren't. And
priority one being like the most
ready to go, could have a voucher,
Got
put in that seat, and so it was dramatically lower. Once those folks are matched, they have a pretty good, I think it's about a 50% success rate. You have to get more of those individuals, but also, where I'm turning my attention to a lot is particularly on the issue of mental health and mental health supportive housing. We need dramatically more of that in the entire county, and that's going to be a big focus going forward.
So on that point, if somebody has a problem with alcohol or narcotics or something, we know what to do with that person. It doesn't always work. Sometimes there's problems. Sometimes they relapse or whatever. But we have a general idea of the best practices to treat them. If somebody has schizophrenia, we know what to do with them. We know what kind of help they could use, what kind of drugs work this way or that. What is the barrier between taking folks like that and connecting them with what we know they need?
It's several things, but first and foremost, it's having the units available that can give that what's called permanent supportive housing, right? With the emphasis on the supportive, which is the wraparound services. So whether you're mental health issues or others, it's not just an apartment where you're there by yourself, but you have folks that are coming in to help you do that. It's a combination of expanding our mental health beds system-wide, which have gone down. They should be going up. And you see that. You notice that. And so that has been a real focus because, look, it's a difficult population to try to help, but that's why you put these services to it. That's why you put the focus on it, whether it's duly diagnosed mental health and or substance abuse. But we just need more supportive housing for folks to be able to get into.
Do you think that, so what if I'm hearing you right, if we built enough of those units and we had enough of those services, then the homeless issue would be as minimal as possible. There might be some, of course, but it would be a tolerable amount or whatever.
Yeah, it's not one thing, unfortunately, right? I mean, it is a multiple. You have to have new product. You have to just flat out. You have to be able to build more housing. You have to be creative about how you're bringing wraparound services to existing stock, whether that be apartments or services. We need more mental health beds at the county. That's something we'll be working very closely with on that. It's a combination of factors that are going to help the folks get the help that they need.
We did some reporting about this new navigation center that the city purchased. Your staff and others directed the purchase of this $7 million old skydiving facility in East Village. Really a nice building, by the way. There was like a boom. And did you ever indoor skydive?
I've not, no.
It seems like I should have jumped on it before it collapsed the bubble. But so there's a skydiving facility, nice big things in there, and you guys came up with the idea you want to do an intake center. Now, as far as I can tell, there's no plan for what would happen there. Am I wrong?
No, I mean, look, it's going to be an incredibly important place to have. Again, back to services that you can assess an individual and to give them the help and the support that they need, and to bring more of those services, whether that's counseling, whether that is substance abuse, whether that's legal help, whether it's help housing navigators to find under one roof with professionals so you can match people to vouchers. But not just there, as you look at family health centers, who's going to be operating that, to have the ability to do that in other parts of the city and to go out and to talk to people where they are. It's all about making it more of a coordinated system and to bringing some of the great work that our providers are doing and that are happening in the bridge shelters. But we need more of a focus. And you have back to, the side on that will get. You'll have some folks that say, I believe in what you're doing. I just don't want it here, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Well, look, we made the decision that we need to move forward, and it's going to help people get off the street. You're going to bring county services together under one roof. We need more of that, not less of that.
So wasn't that the whole idea of the Connections the Connections housing program we did several years ago? I remember you had a lot of trouble trying to get your mind around that idea.
You remember that well.
Yeah, and it was supposed to have all those services in that building, and it was supposed to be a major solution. You came around, I think, but the services never showed up there.
No, the Connections is doing good work. We need more of it.
Okay.
That's just the reality. To ignore it is not to help solve a problem. We need to be making sure that, as I said, that we're getting help and support, and it's the whole focus is not just a bed for the night, which in itself is important. But what's most important is that we connect people to the services for permanent supportive housing so they get back on their feet for good.
I think when you're making that deal with the neighborhood, on the one hand, it's one thing to say, well, this is important storage, and here's why it's important, or it's important shelter, and here's why that's important. But I have a hard time saying what even it is when it comes to that intake center. Like it's important, like windows that people can go to and get driver's license.
Like I said, you're going to get all of the services, and you're going to get people, particularly with the housing navigators and people that are experts at doing that, under one roof. I'll invite you to come when it's up and running.
I look forward
I'm
to
sure
that.
You will. We need more of that, not less of that.
Okay. I mean, couldn't you go around with like iPads and sort of sign people up for?
Well, I think that's part of what they're going to be doing.
Okay.
They will have that location, but one of the benefits of family health services is they have other locations around the city, physical locations, but also their ability to go out and meet with folks with data right in their hands out on the street. And I'm looking forward to it.
Do you guys get that a lot? Like with every city problem, like, well, couldn't you just have an iPad and just like take care
People
of it?
are never shy to share their suggestions, Scott. Welcome to the job.
I have just one last question on that. So one of your major supporters or a supporter was involved with the ownership and the loans with that building, David Malcolm. Did he put a tremendous amount of pressure on you to do that? And what was that like?
No, look, it was real estate's assets, folks. And one of the I think benefits of that location, it's where we need the services. It's right next to St. Vincent de Paul. It's right next to where Alpha is doing great work. So let's make sure that we have the ability in a close proximity relationship to help the people that need the help right away. It's not just, though, about one, as we just talked about, it's not just about one location. The real work will be going out in the community from that central hub.
Let's shift just a little bit about the same sort of issue, this measure to raise the hotel room tax, pay for an expansion of the convention center, significant amount of funding for these homeless services. You're talking about some of this wraparound services you're discussing, and then some money for road repair. Carl DeMaio, your former colleague, a close buddy, I think, DeMaio said, he supported a similar tax when he was on the city council, not quite as much of an increase, but almost the same. And for the expansion of the convention center, now he's one of the lead opponents, put up a website, and he said, quote, $2 billion of the funds will be wasted on homeless social service programs. There is no actual plan, though, of what that money would go to. So what would you say to something like that?
Look, I'm strongly supportive of this measure. And I think what you've seen, particularly in the last several months, is really an unprecedented coalition, Scott, of San Diegans coming together. It's Democrats, Republicans, business, labor. It's the right thing to do for the city on several fronts. First and foremost, expanding the convention center, which is a huge economic engine. And when we drive that and we drive that revenue, that's more money to the general fund that we use to hire cops and firefighters, pave roads, keep libraries and rec centers open, an economic engine by its very definition. Road repair, obviously, but particularly for the first time to have a dedicated funding source for homelessness. Again, on a revenue measure that is supported by the hotel industry, that we know that we need the dollars, but you also want the flexibility for a measure that is going to be around for decades to say it has to be spent on homelessness. You have to have those independent audits. You have to lock in those funds, which we will do, but also gives you the flexibility because if we're sitting here in 15 years from now, maybe some innovative programs and ideas that we haven't thought about or that are appropriate at the time that you want to be able to spend those dollars on. Look, you're always going to have folks that don't want to do things. But this is the right thing to do for San Diego. It's going to be incredibly important for our economy. It's going to help people that are on the street. And it like I said, it's never easy to get 2/3 vote. But this is one of those rare instances where we have so much strong support on both sides of the aisle. And that's what we're going to need to get it across the finish line.
If it gets less than 2/3 but more than 50%, are you going to fight for it?
Look, there's a lot of you're getting to. Is it 50% or 2/3? That'll be up to the city attorney and the courts. Obviously, there's some discussion of what it is right now. But look, the committee is approaching this as though it's 2/3. The good news is it has strong support from San Diegans. It's tough to get 2/3 for any issue, but at the same time, when people understand clearly that these are visitors that are going to be paying this. You have folks on both sides of the political spectrum say, yes, this is the right thing to do. That does not happen that often in the city, Scott. And so it's going to be up to all of us to go out there and support it. It is absolutely the right thing to do for the city.
Last time we talked, you were lobbying the Republican Party in town. They have a default decision to not support any taxes, to oppose any new taxes. But you said you were going to try to get them to either go neutral or even support it. What's the projection on that?
Yeah, they'll be looking at it later in the next month, I believe. For all the right reasons that I just said. This is again a revenue source that San Diegans aren't going to be paying. It's going to be visitors. We know how important expanding this convention center. We just finished Comic-Con. Everybody saw what that is incredibly important to the city, and our ability to attract additional groups to come to San Diego. Again, that benefits every single neighborhood in this city, the dollars that go to the general fund. It's an economic no-brainer. But you have to get out there and fight for it. You have to push hard for it, and that's what a campaign's all about.
Another measure on the ballot is the Soccer City and then the SDSU West plan. You endorsed Soccer City a year or so ago. You're still on board with that?
I am.
So you would say you want voters to vote for Soccer City and against SDSU West?
No, look, you're gonna have good. They're both going to be on the ballot. You're right. I came out and supported Soccer City. Had the elements that I think are important. What's that? A new stadium for not only to bring MLS to San Diego, but a permanent home for Aztec football. The ability once and for all to get the river park that we so desperately need and has been long planned for it, and a funding mechanism to pay for it, and the ability to provide more housing. Per our conversation earlier, we need more housing. Look,
right.
you have great, well-meaning people on both sides of these, on both the Soccer City and the SDSU measure. It's going to be up to voters to make that choice. It's going to be my job as mayor that whatever measure passes, if they pass, is to make sure that it's negotiated fairly and I'm protecting taxpayers. And that's exactly what I'll do.
The League of California Cities today just announced it was joining a lawsuit to throw these initiatives off the ballot. Their argument is, this is a quote from the deputy counsel, Allison Leary. She wrote, "To the League's knowledge, no initiative has ever tried to force a sale or lease of public property in the guise of an ordinance." And the argument that the city attorney makes is that it ties your and the city council's hands too much. That they can pass new zoning and laws, but they can't tell you what to do. What do you think of that argument?
Well, look, the city attorney has felt very strongly about that. And the difference arguing being, is it a legislative or an administrative action? It's hard to predict what what a judge is going to do. Judges are usually reluctant to do things before
you support that lawsuit, though?
I think getting the answer is always a good thing.
So you're okay with it?
I think we're going to find out very quickly in the next week or so. But the point is, you may not find out until after the election.
So how does this work? You preside over city council closed sessions, but you don't actually get to vote. So this is a situation where you're handling this discussion, but then you have to just see what they do.
That's one of the setups of the new strong mayor system of government. Yes, one of the trade-offs and checks and balances.
All right. So I got a couple more things.
Yeah,
I want to ask you about the future of the Republican Party. So you were a Republican still? I did.
In 2 minutes or less?
Yeah. That's it. I got my timer here. Stop glaring at me, Greg. So do you support John Cox for governor?
Yes.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
And why?
Well, look, the one party rule has not been working for the state, and I've had the opportunity to speak very clearly, particularly about if you will, our brand of republicanism that I think we ought to be doing in California. It's not a carbon copy of the national model, but one that says we need to continue with reforms. One that means we have to continue on making the changes. So many things that I think we're doing the right thing to be here in San Diego. What we've done as a leader on pension reform, as an example, Scott, the state absolutely has to do that. It's crowding out all of the other services that we as Californians expect and deserve. So we need that change. We need that reform.
Okay. One of your a Republican Party operative consultant, Ryan Klumpner, recently gave me a short interview for our politics report, one of the best newsletters really in the West Coast, I think. It was about his decision to leave the Republican Party. And one of the things he said is that it feels like it's becoming more of a party of just Trump and actually trampling on some of the principles that free trade and even tolerance and acceptance of immigrants and all kinds of things. What do you think of that perspective?
Well, look, that's his perspective. Look, everybody's going to have their different views on particularly what they're seeing, whether it's a difference on national issues. And I'll have my differences. Look, just as an example, one of the things that I've been pretty outspoken about recently is the absolute need for us to continue free trade. I think that's a huge benefit for the city, for this region. Feel strongly about it and making my voice heard not only here locally, but in Washington, D.C. as well. You're going to have different views and different opinions. That's okay. But that's part of what makes a party strong, is when you can talk about those views and have differences now and again. You
feel like there's still a place for that in the Republican Party?
I do, absolutely. And it's incumbent upon, whether it's anybody to express your views, whether you're going to agree, whether you're going to disagree, for the benefits, particularly for us here in San Diego. And that's my job, and I love doing it.
The state passed what some people call the sanctuary state law. I've made my grievance with that descriptor known, but basically it restricts how law enforcement can cooperate with federal agents, but federal immigration agents still allows cooperation in a number of cases and still allows notification of people being released from jails in a number of cases. But now the state is locked in a legal battle with the Trump administration about that. What side are you on in that?
Look, we've always had the right balance in San Diego, and we've had it under Democratic administrations and Republican administrations. And we've had that right community support that I think has served our city very, very well. And no need to change that. It's kept us one of the safest big cities in the country. And as mayor, that's not something that I ever take for granted, and spend a lot of time ensuring that we have that community trust. Since we last spoke, I appointed a new police chief, Chief Dave Nisleit, who took over for Chief Zimmerman. He's doing an excellent job out there. He's all of the community groups. A safe city absolutely is essential that you have the trust of the community, and it's something you have to work for and earn every day. And that's been our approach, and will continue to be our approach.
This directly affects what your employees, what the police can do. Surely you have some perspective on which way it should go, whether it should remain status quo with the law or whether the Trump should prevail and throw it out.
Yeah, like I said, our approach was always the right approach, and it was not only here in San Diego, but it served us well, I think, as we worked with our county folks and officials as well. The proof has been not only in the trust, in the low crime rate, and it's something I feel strongly about.
Do you think that dangerous criminals are being released because of this law and threatening San Diego residents?
Look, I said from the very beginning, you want the ability to communicate with folks. You want the ability to make sure that you're interacting with our police folks, but you also wanted, the ability for folks that were arrested for a crime for you to work with your federal partners to do that. I think that just makes sense. That was the right balance. That was the common sense approach that we had here in San Diego. It worked, and it served us well. So
the old way worked better.
It worked tremendously well for us.
So we should go back to that.
And there's so many things like, I think we talked about it last time, that I feel strongly about when you think about changes. For example, Prop 47, as we talked about last time, which, has changed from somebody's ability to be on the streets and doing heroin and methamphetamine that used to get arrested for that. Now it's a misdemeanor. That's more of a focus that I'm focused on right now in terms of what we're seeing results on the streets.
I'm sorry to press this, but I still can't gather whether you're saying before the sanctuary state law was better than it is now.
Yeah, we've never been a sanctuary city because we had the right balance. We had the right approach, as I said. We had the trust of the community. But if you were arrested for a crime, right, then you had the ability to work with the federal partners. That was the balance that kept us safe. I think that was a balance that was strongly supported by many people in San Diego, and it's served us very well.
So you'd be okay if the Trump administration prevailed?
Like, you're going to have all kinds of things go back and forth, Scott. There's all kinds of different lawsuits that are out there. But again, what's important to me as mayor is that we have that trust in our community. We do. That is not something I ever take for granted.
All right. One last question. The Sandag, you've been really active at Sandag. You've used the new power the city has on the San Diego Association of Governments board. You helped block the ascension of the number 2 to the CEO role there, the executive director role. Why? What kind of executive director do you think Sandag needs right now?
Well, look, I'm not going to get into closed session votes, but at the same time, we need new leadership, Scott. We need leadership that is going to help move the organization to be more open, to be more transparent, and to help bring people together after a very difficult time where a lot of that was not happening. So we have the opportunity, and I've been participating in some of the interview panels that we had in terms of half a day last week. We've got some good folks out there that are going to be candidates. We're going to be bringing some of those to the board here shortly. But it's an important position, and one that, from my standpoint, we really need somebody to have that right balance of experience to do the job, but also the ability to work with a board that's very diverse, but to communicate where we're going, to do so publicly and very openly and transparently.
All right, Mayor Kevin Faulconer, got a bunch more questions, but we'll just have to have you back soon.
I'll have to come back, and we'll do some hot takes, and we'll go from there.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott.